Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. Now today on Project Fairlady, folks, we're focusing on the power steering and particularly on the return line plumbings. So I've got a bit of the piping on the ground, so let's take a look at what it actually has from the factory. So what we have here, folks, is the low pressure return for the power steering setup. So this first pipe here, this goes onto your steering rack, just near where your steering shaft and everything connects on. Now it's the outlet for the return from your steering rack. So when your pump pressurizes the rack, there's another fitting next to it. It goes in, through the rack, out through that, all the way through all this crap, and then back up here to the fluid reservoir, and then from there it goes back down into the pump. Now, the issue that I have with all this setup here from the factory is we have all this piping, and all we're basically doing is going from here to here. They're almost right next to each other. We don't need any of this piping. As far as I can tell, this is due to Nissan wanting to reuse a lot of the components on the left-hand drive US vehicles, because on the US vehicles this fitting here is on that side, so you need to get from that side all the way back to the reservoir on this side, hence you need this. But on the JDM versions you don't, and in my uneducated opinion, folks, I feel that's probably what they've done. I just can't see any other rationale for having all this plumbing to go from there to there. It's not like they have a power steering cooler on the vehicle that they've used all this plumbing to get to. There is actually no power steering cooler on this thing, which I found quite surprising when I first started pulling the vehicle apart. Very rarely do you ever come across a vehicle that doesn't have a power steering cooler. Apparently the UK version does have a power steering cooler, but it is the only version that does. And honestly, folks, any vehicle that you're going to be pushing reasonably hard with a lot of sustained high revs and even high speed, you're really going to start overheating your power steering, which is why you generally always have a power steering cooler, even if it's quite small. And due to the age of this, folks, the rubber hoses, the hose that join those two pieces together, and this hose here that joins onto the fluid reservoir, are in a very poor state. Now this is almost like plastic. The rubber is rock hard, and you can see that it's actually all splitting, and it just looks absolutely terrible. There's no way that you could get this thing to seal. No matter how tight you did this, it would always weep. And because this is part of this, and as you can see here, it's actually crimped onto this. The only way you could repair this would be to cut that crimp off and then put a new piece of hose on and just use hose clamps on it, which is okay. Like I say, it is a low pressure return line. So what I plan to do with all this, folks, is I'm going to get rid of all of this. It's all going in the bin, and where this banjo is here on your power steering rack, I'm putting an AN fitting, and then we're running in AN6 Teflon line. I'm going to run to the front, and I'm going to run a small power steering cooler, roughly about the size of the factory oil cooler on this thing. I could have actually used that. It would have been a pretty perfect size, but I want to try and get rid of all the hose clamps and rubber hoses and stuff I can on the vehicle, just to alleviate all the issues with oil leaks that these things have because of all of this kind of needless crap that's on the car. So anything that I can, I'm using AN fittings on, and PTFE hose, just because once it's done, it's done. There's no leaks, it's all good. So I'll take you up to the car and we'll have a bit of a look at what I've started. So this is the position on the rack, folks, where this banjo fitting was here for the beginning of that return line. And as you can see, I've now got an AN fitting in there. This is just a metric adapter God, offhand I can't remember what it is. What I'll do, I'll put that in an edit, so you'll see a little bit of text come up right there with what size that is, and that's running into AN6. Now that's an AN6 PTFE hose there that we're going to be running into, and we're going to snake our way up through the front. So, come around under here, you can see where that guy's heading. So we come out of here, and then we sneak up through there, like that, up into there. And that hose then, folks, that's it coming up the back through there. You can see I've got a P-clip, a stainless rubber lined P-clip on that, holding it to the frame rail, and we go up the side of our power steering pump and across to here. So this is the line from our rack, and this other line here, this other AN6 PTFE, that's coming from the power steering fluid reservoir, and we'll go over that in a second. And what I have here, folks, is an existing M6 bolt hole, and I'm going to use that to make a bracket that then runs up and holds these two hoses in sort of a vertical position there. So once we have it tied up there, we can then sort of snake around the intercooler piping into the front. So we'll get out of here and I'll show you how I've got the power steering fluid reservoir set up now. And that's it here, folks. So that's our fluid reservoir, and this is the return line coming down from here. So you can see what I've done here is I've tigged an AN6 adapter, and I'm now running an AN6 hose onto that. So that'll all just be sweet, no more hose clamp or anything like that. It'll just be hopefully 100% foolproof. And on this side of it, which the bottom hose connection there, which feeds your pump, and just behind that you can see there's a Z1 hose. That's your J hose that sits there. So, you know, nice big silicone hose that goes straight into the pump, and that is good. And then on your pressure side, you can see I've had a new hose made up. That's it sitting there, wrapped in plastic along the bottom, which I sort of briefly showed last week. So all this stuff is all great and fantastic and new, and it should be a pretty good sort of a setup. You can see that I've also completely gotten rid of all the Hikers stuff, and you know, the Hikers pump and the Hikers reservoir and everything. I'm now using an NA pump and an NA reservoir, so the whole system on this has been greatly sort of simplified. So those two hoses, folks, obviously they come out in the front, so let's have a look at that. And this is our two hoses here, folks. I'm not sure if this is where they're actually going to come out or whether they're going to come out here and kind of wrap around, but for the moment, just while I'm sort of working out how to fix all these lines back, that's where I've got them. So as I say, they're going to run into a cooler. I'm probably going to mount a cooler somewhere here. The cooler that I have is pretty much exactly this size. As I mentioned, this is the standard TT engine oil cooler, but it has just, you know, hose barbs on it, and unfortunately that's just not the way I want to do any of this. As I mentioned, I'm trying to get rid of all of the hose barbs and have AN fittings for everything. So I think that's probably where it's going to end up being mounted, somewhere here, because there is a vacant spot there. It's not going to affect anything else. It's got good airflow, and I think it's just a very kind of suitable spot, as long as it doesn't interfere with the AC dryer, which is in behind this. But we'll see. We'll see. I might have to take it to the other side, or I don't really want to put it in front of the oil cooler. But as I said, it's not very big, but still, I'd rather have it in a vacant spot than blocking something else. But we'll see. And what I'm currently doing on the bench, folks, is I'm about to start making up this bracket that's going to be used to hold those lines in position off the chassis rail there where I showed you. So you can see this is just a bit of 20x20 aluminium. It's actually been cut off the side of something else that I've had, but it's about 20 by 18 or something like that. And this notch here, that's going to be notched over the chassis rail, and then there's going to be a bolt hole drilled through here, and that's going to go into that existing threaded hole that's there. And then there's going to be 2 spots here for the hoses to run through, so we'll drill that. We'll cut that with a bandsaw, clean it up, bevel the edges off and everything. Tap a hole through the middle, or 2 holes through the middle, to squeeze it back together once it's done. And this should form that bracket that we need to tie up the pipes near where we start to exit through the intercooler piping. So I'll get this chopped out, folks, and at least having a look at it now, you can see what it started as. And I'll get it chopped out and I'll give you another look at it, and we'll mount it in position once it's done. Alrighty, I'll be back. There we go, folks, that's pretty much that. I just got to file it all up. You know, it's all a bit daggy looking. Cut these bolts down to the right size. Drill a hole in it now where it mounts on the chassis. And then what I'll do here is I'll just run that drill through there again. I think it was 11.5 from memory. Just because it's slightly ovaled now from being slipped with a bandsaw. And then that's our bracket there. Double AN6 holder mounted to the chassis. Beautiful. I'll clean it up and we'll put it in. And there it is, folks. That's the finished bracket. Probably not my best bracket, but probably not my worst. I'll clean it up a little bit more later on anyway, folks. I'm probably going to anodise all these brackets that I'm making. I have all the gear to do it, so I might as well knock up a bit of a black anodising brew and do all these when the time comes. As I say, I'll clean them up a bit more. Still got a few scratches and stuff on it. Before I throw it in the anodising, but should go and fit it up, and see if it fits. Alright, folks, there it is. Does seem to be doing the job quite well, holding those lines in position. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's pretty good, indeed. Fantastic. Alright, into the front. Yay, my oil cooler just turned up today, folks. And this is it right here, so let's get it out of the box. Oh yeah. Okay, and as you can see, it is almost identical in size to the factory Z32 engine oil cooler. Ha! So yeah, that's it, folks. Obviously not very big. It is only a power steering cooler. Main benefit for me, why I didn't use this guy, is it's AN6. Very nice. So we might go over to the Fairlady and have a look where we're going to mount this. Alright, folks, you can see I've already started on a mount here. I've got a little bit of cardboard that I've just sort of cut and stuck on there, and that's kind of the beginning for the mount. I've decided this is the spot where I'm going to put it. There's a little bit too much clutter over here with this AC dryer and everything, and all the hoses and pipe work in that area. That means running a little bit more length in the hoses, but I think this is probably a pretty good spot for it because it doesn't really block anything. It runs over the top of your oil cooler here just slightly, but other than that, you know, it's kind of a really nice spot to have the thing mounted. So that's where it's going to go, I think, folks. I've just got to finish this bracket up now on here, put a tab out from here to mount it on. You can see these are the two hoses coming through from that other bracket that we made, coming down through there. We've just got to work out how to do this. I think I'm going to run one behind this longer one, and this other one here I will probably run at the front. I'll just grab a couple of fittings for this, folks, and I'll dummy it up a bit and I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So yeah, probably something like that on that side. That means I can bring this through from the back, run it along the bottom, along this bracket that I made up along here, then just bring it up from the back. That way it's not interfering with anything. And I'll probably use a similar fitting on this side over here. And that way I can bring the hose down and along and not have it sort of running straight across the oil cooler there. And I can set up, you know, a P-clip or something off this bracket here just to hold that hose there. So that's what I'll start on, folks. I might make a few changes to it as I go along, but basically that's where it'll be. I've already had the front bar on and had a little bit of a look, and it seems to work out well with the front bar as well as far as air direction and everything. So I'll get stuck into this, folks, and work out a bracket for it. Bit of insight into the CAD design process, folks. This is my first piece that I had on there that I sort of roughed out to begin making this bracket with. I've then streamlined it into this version so you can see the sort of similarity. I've made it a little bit wider here and trimmed it down there, and the biggest issue I was having here was this narrow piece across the center not really being wide enough and carrying enough strength. And because I needed to sort of fold down and get a fixing up underneath from here, it's like, oh, what am I going to do there? So, you know, I figured out if I just cut this on an angle, go across, that'll still fold down, give me a bolt fixing, but it'll give me a wider section here, which is what I've done. And just kind of tidied it up a bit, and yeah, so that's how that'll go when it's done, something like that. So now I'm just about to copy that onto a piece of aluminium and cut it out, which I'll do right now, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Alrighty, well, we've now reproduced this in some 3mm aluminium, guys. So that's what we've got, as you can see. It's just a copy of that template there. I have changed it slightly. I did have this piece on the bottom here, which you can see isn't on this piece here. I just changed how I was going to attach the oil cooler. So what I've done, instead of having that tab on the bottom, I've made another bracket that sort of bolts to this. So you know, it just gives me a little bit of height flexibility in the setup. So when it's together, it'll sort of be like that. You know, these two pieces will just bolt through, and then it's allowed me to use like rubber insulators, top and bottom, on this section here. So what I might do, folks, we'll go and bolt this onto the car, and I'll show you how I'm then going to set up the bracket for this end. So let's get this on the car. So that's sort of what we got there so far, folks. So what I've done is I've cut this little piece up here. It's out of some 5mm aluminium, same thickness as this piece under here. It's actually an offcut from that. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to weld it onto that piece there to give me a mount for this side, and then obviously mount through, put some rubber mounts on it and stuff. This end up here will just be loose. There's no need to, I've got 3 points on that, and because it's so stout, and short, you know, like it's not going to twist or anything like that. That won't be an issue. So that's the next thing, folks, is I have to remove this, get that bracket out, weld this on, and then sort of set it back up. But you can see it's coming along. That's sort of you know, not a bad sort of a mount and setup for it. It'll be nice and solid, and you know, pretty happy with that, I think. Alright, I'll get this stuff done and we'll come back. Alright folks, we're just about there. This is our engine oil cooler mount, and these are a couple of tabs that I've welded on to take various things for the power steering cooler, the mount one end, and this is actually to take a P-clip to hold one of the lines that goes runs up to it. So I'll get this bolted back on and we'll have a bit of a look at it, eh? There we go, folks. That's pretty much that. I'm obviously going to use a different size P-clip on the front here. That one's too loose. I do have ones that are right size, but they need a little bit trimming off the end of them, and I don't have any snips in here with me at the moment, so I'm just not going to do it. You can see what that's for. So obviously when this this fitting's done here, that's going to sort of keep it there and, you know, hold it in a nice sort of position there. But you can see how the bracket arrangement all worked out. Obviously all this stuff's only bolted back in loosely because I have to sort of take it all back out to finish these lines and everything. But that's worked out pretty well, folks. I'm pretty happy with that. It's in a good spot. It's well mounted. I don't think it's going to cause any problems to anything. And yeah, I'm just kind of happy with it. So I think we might leave this there, folks. That's my take on rerouting the power steering return lines and fitting a power steering cooler to the Z32. So I hope you liked the video, folks. I hope some of you guys find it interesting and informative in some way. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And as always, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.